Of the artists and designers that are from the United Arab Emirates are mostly female, at least the ones that I've met. I think a lot of the guys, what we end up doing is we end up going to business school. I frankly went to business school because I like business, you know. I did my management, my marketing, my psychology, graduated, worked for 5 years, and then realized that my passion is in design. So I went to my dad and I told him, this is what I want to do. You know what he said? He said, I don't understand what you're doing, but I'm going to fund you anyways. And that's what happened. So this is just a personal example. I see in some elements, like I've got a friend, Salim Al-Qasimi, you probably know him. The guy, he has a studio called Fikra. He's now in RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, studying graphic design. Now, you know, that's another example. And there's a few others. But honestly, if you want to look at it, I think the female locals are the best representation of art and design in the Emirates.
Jessica Swan, Dubai Eye Radio. Just on the topic of self-censorship, I think that so many of us can appreciate the frustrations, and I think there's a radio presenter down here who made some points before about not being able to speak about rape and subjects like that. I can confidently say I have talked about rape. I've talked about just about, well, many things, bar homosexuality, and I tried to talk about the homosexuality issue recently with the "Excuse me, I'm a girl." But it's difficult, it's really difficult, and especially as a journalist, your job is to scrutinise, and the minute you start scrutinising, that's where I think you're going to get in trouble. But I don't have the answers either. I mean, every single day on the radio, every single word, whether it comes out of my mouth, my co-presenter's mouth, or any of the listeners that may call up, I'll be called on that, and I could potentially lose my job over that. And sometimes, well, a lot of time it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's a really challenging environment to work in. But I think it gets down to balance, and that's on a daily basis. But the minute you come out with that frustration, and the minute your frustration can be sensed, that's when you look like you're judging and you're scrutinising. And at that point, and I know it's challenging because that's what many people who have learnt in other countries, as a journalist, that's what you're meant to do, that's what you're getting paid to do. But we can't necessarily do that against the system in this country. And yes, it's frustrating, but that's just the way it is. So, I mean, unless, you know, I mean, I'm still here to tell the story, so, but that's not to say that, you know, touch wood, nothing happens tomorrow. I've been called as well. I've got warning letters for talking about Iran and the TRA. I mean, why didn't they have a go at me for talking about any of the other things that I talk about? Who knows? I don't understand. But balance, I think, is probably where the answer lies, and trust is a huge one. But complacency of that trust is what's going to get you in trouble as well. I think so. There's another point as well, and I just want to, I don't know who on the panel wants to answer this. It's a question really about the perception, and we keep talking about stereotypes, and I hate the stereotypes as well, particularly post 9/11 with Islam and Muslims and so on. I hate that, and I try and address that myself. But often, if we have a historical reference, or we have an understanding of the construction of the past, we have something to go by. So I think there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on the present day and trying to understand the newness, but perhaps there's not enough emphasis that's been placed on the truth of the past and the construction of the past. So whose responsibility is it in the media to create that perception of the past, a well-established perception? Because even as an Australian, I remember we had the Olympics in 2000, it was a running joke amongst the entire Australian national community, who the hell are we? What do we represent? Are we going to stick Kylie Minogue up there, or, you know, what are we going to have? Who are we? So it's really challenging. And you know, Australia, 200 years of white settlement, but there's thousands and thousands of years of Aboriginal Indigenous culture before that. So still, it's not mandatory in schools to study Aboriginal culture, which is a travesty. Perhaps if we had that back in 2000, we'd be able to say, yes, this is who we are. So whose responsibility is it to focus on what the past is in this region, so you can actually move on and take a constructive look at what the present is?
First of all, I think the establishment and construction of the past is a shared responsibility. If you look at a number of other cultures, you don't see that responsibility monopolized by a single party or a single person or a single stratum of society. So it is a shared responsibility. It is, if you will, a goulash of total national opinion and intellectual contribution.
How many have heard the stereotype that Emiratis, Gulf Arabs are lazy? We don't hire them, they don't work. Yes, no, maybe so. I think for sure. Right. Okay. A lot of this, I mean, where does it come from? Do you ever ask yourself, where in the world does it come from? Or why? Is it true? Is it not true? I mean, do we ask these questions? You hear even Emiratis say this about themselves, like all stereotypes and people from minorities actually, and that's why the title of my speech is How Does It Feel to Become a Problem? Comes from a book about African Americans actually. But I think it's also the preponderance, what a word, sorry. It comes from this, this focus on too many Bedouin images, this sort of ancient, not like vague past, and seeing the Bedouin as lazy, as solitude and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons where it comes from. And it comes from many misunderstandings over the year, but I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried to make some connections between history and stereotypes and imagery of that whole issue of the Bedouin and the sanitized Bedouin, I call it. Also, we have many Emirati young filmmakers shooting on Jazirat al-Hamra. Does anyone know where that is? In Ras Al Khaimah. It's a nice place to go, but that's, I think, almost 70% of Emirati filmmakers have filmed there. Why? Because it's a place that represents pre-oil or 70s, 60s Emirates that somehow there's a connection to. And it's not a Bedouin culture, exactly, and it's not only a Hadar culture, as you mentioned.